Zola was the kind of woman people admired from a distance. In the colorful town of Nkamba, everyone knew her name. She walked with quiet confidence, always dressed in beautiful traditional clothes, her head wraps tied with care, her smile soft but strong. She had a good job in the city, spoke politely, helped neighbors when she could, and never missed a Sunday at church. People often said, "Zola is a blessing," but the saddest part was the people who should have loved her the most, her own family, treated her like she was never enough. At home there were no warm hugs, no kind words, no gentle care. Only expectations. Her parents praised her in front of others but hardly spoke to her unless they needed money. Her siblings joked that she was the family bank, and laughed when she looked tired. She bought groceries, paid the bills, and carried the weight of the household silently. Still, no one ever asked her how she felt, if she was okay, or if she needed anything. They saw her success but never her struggle. Zola gave them everything, but inside she was starting to feel like nothing. She was the golden daughter to the world, but inside her own home, she was just a shadow. At home Zola felt like she didn't belong. The same house she grew up in now felt cold, like the walls were closing in on her. There were no warm greetings when she came back from work, no one waiting to ask how her day was. Her family only noticed her when they needed something. Her father would mention unpaid bills, her mother would hand her a grocery list, and her siblings would casually bring up things they wanted, like new phones, clothes, or money to go out. No one asked. They expected. They praised her success in public, but behind closed doors, it was a different story. If she didn't send money on time, they got angry. If she said she was tired, they called her dramatic. If she asked for a little space, they said she had changed. Zola was always walking on eggshells, afraid that if she said the wrong thing, their love, what little of it was left, would vanish completely. Her job, her salary, her hard work, they were never for her. They were tools used to keep everyone else happy. What once felt like achievement now felt like a trap. She couldn't say no. She couldn't rest. And every time she gave in, she felt herself shrinking a little more. She sometimes wondered if they even knew who she really was. Or did they only see her as a source of money, a solution to their problems? Her heart ached for a family that hugged her just because they loved her, not because she paid the bills. The silence in the house was loud. There was no laughter, no shared stories, just requests and pressure. Zola had built a good life for herself, but in her own home, she was a visitor. She was present in the house but never truly seen. The house was full of people, but not one of them made her feel safe. It wasn't a home anymore. It was just a place where her love was taken for granted, and her worth was measured in what she could give. Zola began to notice a pattern that quietly broke her heart. When she gave, they smiled. When she handed over her salary, paid the rent, or bought groceries, her parents would say things like, "You're such a good daughter," or "We're proud of you." But the moment she said, "Not this time," or asked for a little break, everything changed. Their praise turned into silence. Their smiles disappeared. And suddenly she was selfish, disrespectful, or forgetting where she came from. It wasn't love, it felt like a transaction. Her younger brother once asked her for money to attend a party. Zola gently said she couldn't afford it that month. She had bills, savings, and her own plans. He didn't even thank her for trying. Instead, he muttered, "Ever since you got that job, you think you're better than us." Stung. Not because of the words, but because deep down she feared they were never proud of her. Just proud of what she gave them. Even her mother, who she hoped would understand, began saying things like, "If we didn't raise you, would you even have that job? Or you owe this family." Zola wanted to give truly. She had a big heart, but she wanted to be loved without a price tag attached. Was that too much to ask? She started questioning everything. Were the hugs real? Were the compliments ever sincere? Or were they only tools to keep her giving more? She began to see that their kindness had limits, and those limits stopped where her money stopped. Zola wasn't asking for gifts or praise. She just wanted to be loved for who she was, not for what she could provide. But every time she said no, she saw how quickly their love disappeared. And that's when the painful truth settled deep in her heart. Maybe they didn't love her at all. Maybe they just needed her. And the difference between the two was beginning to hurt more than she could hide. At night, when the house was quiet and everyone else had gone to bed, Zola would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling an ache in her chest that words couldn't describe. It was a deep, silent pain. one she carried every day with a smile on her face and strength in her walk. But in the stillness of the night, when no one was watching, the smile would fade and the tears would come. She didn't cry loudly. She never did. She just let the tears slip down her face quietly, like they were afraid to be seen, just like she was. She often wondered what life would be like if her worth wasn't tied to the money she earned or the things she could give. Would anyone still sit beside her if she had nothing to offer? Would anyone bring her a cup of tea if she were sick? Would anyone care if she said, "I'm tired"? The truth felt heavier with every question. No one had ever asked her if she was okay. No one noticed when her eyes looked dull or her voice lacked energy. Her family only saw her as the one who always managed to keep things going. They never stopped to think that maybe, just maybe, she was tired of being strong. Zola felt like she was disappearing inside her own life. Everyone saw her success, but no one saw her struggle. She was always giving, always showing up, always solving problems, but no one ever asked about hers. The loneliness wrapped around her like a thick blanket she couldn't shake off. She didn't want to be praised for what she gave. She wanted to be seen, to be loved, to be held. Not for her job or her money, but just for being Zola. But each night as she cried herself to sleep, the ache in her heart whispered a hard truth. In this house, love was never unconditional. It had a price, and she was tired of paying it. That evening, Zola sat alone in her small room. The door closed behind her and the soft hum of the ceiling fan spinning above. The rest of the house was buzzing, her brother shouting at the TV, her sister laughing on a call, her mother giving out orders, but none of it touched her. She sat on the edge of her bed, still in her office clothes, her hands resting in her lap, and her heart heavy with questions she couldn't shake. What if I lost my job? The thought came like a whisper, then grew louder in her mind. Would they still care? Would anyone check on me if I had nothing to give? Would they even see me? It wasn't about testing them to feel powerful. It was about finding the truth. Zola wasn't looking for sympathy or drama. She just needed to know where she stood. Was she really loved? Or was she just useful? The idea scared her. It felt dangerous, like walking barefoot into a storm. But something inside her was tired of guessing. She was done pretending everything was fine. So she made a quiet decision right there in her room. She would pretend to lose her job. Not to play games, but to reveal the truth hiding beneath her family's smiles and thank yous. She knew it would come with risk. She might be laughed at, blamed, even pushed aside. But deep down, Zola felt like she had already been living that reality. Just with nicer words and fake warmth. At least this way she would see who was real. She looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes looked older than her age. Worn. Tired. But somewhere behind that tiredness, there was a spark of courage. This was more than a lie, it was a path to clarity. If love disappeared when the money stopped, then it was never love to begin with. That night Zola didn't cry. She simply lay down, pulled the blanket over herself and whispered, "Tomorrow we'll see." The next morning, Zola woke up with a tightness in her chest. She moved slowly, her mind heavy with the weight of what she was about to do. She dressed simply, tied her head wrap, and sat quietly at the breakfast table. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her face calm. Her family was busy. Her brother scrolling through his phone, her sister pouring tea, her mother giving a list of chores without even looking up. No one noticed her silence. With shaky hands and a soft voice, Zola finally spoke. I was laid off yesterday," she said, almost whispering the words. For a moment there was silence. Just a pause. She thought they were about to react with concern. She expected someone to ask if she was okay. Maybe a hug. Maybe even a few kind words. But instead, her brother let out a short laugh. "So what now? You're just going to sit at home all day?" Her sister scoffed and muttered, "Wow, what bad timing." Her mother didn't even stop buttering her bread. "That's just great. Now everything will fall on us." Zola sat still, her hands clenched under the table. No one asked how she was feeling. No one asked if she needed support. They didn't even ask why she lost her job. Their voices were sharp. Their words cold. Their eyes indifferent. Inside, her heart dropped. She thought maybe, just maybe, they'd show a little warmth. But in that moment she saw the truth clearly. It wasn't just disappointment, it was annoyance. As if she had failed in her only purpose. As if her entire worth had vanished with her paycheck. Her blood ran cold. Not from fear, but from the raw, painful clarity that settled deep in her bones. They never loved her. They only loved what she brought to the table. Zola had barely finished her sentence when the mood in the room shifted like a storm rolling in. One moment everything was normal. The next, the air felt heavy with judgment. Her mother rolled her eyes so hard it looked like disgust. "So now you're going to sit here like a burden?" she said sharply, not even looking at Zola. Her brother leaned back in his chair with a mocking smile. "I guess that means no more data for my phone," he said with a sarcastic laugh, as if her pain was some kind of joke. Her sister didn't even try to hide the bitterness in her voice. "What use are you now?" she asked coldly, folding her arms like she'd been waiting to say that. Zola sat there stunned, her heart pounding. She didn't expect them to cheer for her. But she never imagined they'd turn on her so quickly, like she was nothing more than a broken ATM. No one asked if she was okay. No one asked what happened or if she needed help. There was no hug, no kind word, just silence, judgment, and blame. Her mother walked away, muttering something about bills and how useless children always come back to eat without contributing. Her sister slammed the teacup down a little too hard. Her brother went back to his phone, smirking. Zola felt herself shrinking inside. The people who should have been her safe space had become her storm. All her life she gave them everything, her time, her money, her energy. And now when she pretended to have nothing, they didn't even offer her the smallest piece of comfort. It hit her hard and fast. This wasn't disappointment. It was resentment. This was who they truly were beneath all the smiles and praise. They had never loved her. They had only loved what she could give. And now in their eyes she was empty. The days that followed felt like slow poison to Zola. One morning, she came into the kitchen to find the bread and milk gone. Her sister, who usually shared breakfast with her, didn't even look up. When Zola gently asked about the missing groceries, her mother snapped, "Maybe if you were still working, the fridge wouldn't be empty." Zola stood there in silence, the lump in her throat growing. She wasn't even really jobless, but the way they treated her now made her feel like a stray dog begging at their table. No one offered her a cup of tea anymore. No one asked if she had eaten. They moved around her like she didn't exist, or worse, like she was in the way. Whispers filled the house. She would pass by closed doors and hear her name said in disgust. "She's so lazy," her brother said once. "Always pretending to be tired," her sister replied. Her parents didn't stop them. They joined in. Every little problem became her fault. If the power went out, it was Zola's fault for not paying. If someone lost something, somehow it was Zola's fault for being distracted and useless. Zola felt herself slipping into a fog of pain and quiet disbelief. These were the same people who used to smile when she came home from work with shopping bags. The same people who used to praise her for holding the family together. Now, without the money, she was just in the way. But through the silence, she started to see clearly. Their kindness had always been tied to her usefulness. Without her paycheck, their love vanished. It was never real. It had conditions, and now that she had taken those away, they showed her who they truly were. Zola didn't cry. She just watched. Every cold shoulder, every cruel word, it was like a mask slipping. And what she saw beneath those masks made her heart ache in a way she didn't know was possible. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Zola was sitting at the table trying to fold some laundry, when her father walked in and looked at her with tired, disappointed eyes. Without warning, he sighed and said, "You've become just another mouth to feed in this house." Just like that. No anger in his voice. Just cold truth, like she was some kind of burden, not his daughter. Zola froze. Her hands stopped moving. She stared at the fabric in her lap, unable to look up. Did he really say that? The same man she had taken to the hospital when he collapsed. The same man she had paid months of bills for when his legs gave out and he couldn't work. She had skipped meals back then to afford his medicine. And now all of that had vanished from his memory like smoke. She wanted to scream, to ask him how he could say something so cruel. But the words never came. Instead, Zola just gave a weak, sad smile and nodded slowly. Not because she agreed, but because she realized there was nothing left to explain. Nothing she could say would bring back the love that was never really there. Inside, something cracked. It wasn't just hurt. It was heartbreak. Her father's words cut deeper than anything her siblings had said. Fathers are supposed to protect their daughters, not treat them like useless leftovers. In that moment, Zola felt like a stranger in her own bloodline. As she folded the last shirt with trembling hands, she didn't cry. She just swallowed the pain the way she had learned to. But that sentence, those 9 words, kept echoing in her mind. Not because of what was said, but because of who said it. That was the moment she stopped hoping they would change. That was the moment something in her heart quietly closed. Zola started drifting through her own home like a ghost. She began sleeping earlier, not because she was tired, but because the silence of her room was better than the noise at dinner. The dinner table, once a place of family talk and laughter, had become a battlefield of cold stares, bitter comments, and the heavy weight of unspoken hate. She stopped showing up. She'd lie in bed, her stomach empty, but her heart even emptier. Eating alone in the kitchen at odd hours became her new normal, just to avoid their judgmental eyes. No one asked her why she didn't eat with them. No one knocked on her door. It was like she had disappeared and no one noticed, or worse, they preferred it that way. Her mother, once known for her warm stews and spicy rice dishes, now cooked like she was feeding strangers. The portions became smaller when Zola was around. Sometimes she'd enter the kitchen to find empty pots and full plates already in their hands. They didn't even pretend anymore. Every corner of the house whispered rejection. The living room, where they used to sit together and talk, now felt like enemy territory. The walls felt closer. The air felt heavier. What once was home now felt like a prison with no bars, only invisible chains made of coldness and cruelty. Zola began to question herself. What had she done so wrong? Was losing a job really enough to erase all the good she had done? Or was this how they always felt and now they were finally showing it? She walked from room to room, barely noticed, barely spoken to. Her footsteps were light, like she was trying not to exist too loudly. She started leaving the house more often, sitting in parks or walking aimlessly, just to feel air that didn't carry judgment. She was no longer a daughter in that home. Not even a sister. She was just someone who lived there, like a tenant no one wanted. A stranger among her own blood. And that, more than anything, broke her. One quiet afternoon, Zola stood in front of her small bedroom mirror, brushing her hair, when something inside her just stopped. She stared at her reflection. Not the strong, confident woman everyone in Kamba admired, but someone tired, worn out, and deeply hurt. Her face looked older than her age, her eyes dull, like they had been carrying the weight of silence for too long. And then it hit her, so hard that she felt the color drain from her cheeks. She hadn't just been sad lately. She hadn't just been ignored. She had been used. All these years she thought she was building a home, holding a family together, doing her part out of love. But now, in the silence of her room and the truth of that mirror, she saw it clearly. No one in that house had ever truly loved her. They had only loved what she could give them. Her money. Her success. Her ability to fix their problems. Not once had they shown real care. Not once had anyone hugged her without expecting something in return. Not once had they said, "We're proud of you," without needing her to pay a bill or do a favor after. And when she pretended to lose it all, their true hearts showed instantly. No support. No comfort. Just coldness. Zola stepped back from the mirror, her hands shaking. It wasn't their cruelty that shocked her the most. It was her own blindness. She had been pouring love into people who were never thirsty for it. She had been holding on to the idea of family, hoping one day it would feel like the word promised. She sat on the edge of her bed, her chest tight, her thoughts racing. This wasn't heartbreak. It was a realization that her home had never truly been home. Her love had never been returned. Her place in their world had never been secure. She was never their daughter out of love, only out of benefit. And that, more than any insult, cut the deepest. That night, while the house was quiet and everyone was asleep, Zola sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the same 4 walls that had witnessed her pain in silence. No tears fell from her eyes this time, just calm acceptance. She knew now that there was nothing more to fight for. No love to earn. No heart to win back. She had given everything and received almost nothing in return. And now it was time to choose herself. She stood up and opened her small wardrobe. One by one, she folded the few clothes she truly loved, bright dresses that made her feel alive, her favorite pair of flats, her head wraps that carried stories of strength. She packed slowly, carefully, like someone finally respecting their own worth. No one knocked. No one asked if she was okay. No one noticed the quiet goodbye already taking shape. Before she left, she looked around her room one last time. Not with sadness but with clarity. This was the room where she had cried, sacrificed, and waited for love that never came. And now it was the room she would leave behind to reclaim her life. She stepped out into the hallway, her suitcase rolling behind her. The air in the house felt heavier than ever, but her steps were light. She didn't slam the door. She didn't leave a note. She simply walked out with her head held high, like a woman who had finally remembered who she was. There was no dramatic exit, no shouting match, no breakdown. Just quiet strength and the sound of a front door closing behind her, for the last time. That house had taken too much from her, but it would take no more. She may have walked away with little, but she carried with her something far more valuable than money or approval. Zola left with her freedom, and that was everything. Zola finally moved into a small apartment on the quiet side of Nkamba. It wasn't fancy or big, but it felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in years, she unlocked a door and stepped into a space that was entirely her own. No shouting voices, no guilt, no demands. Just silence, peace, and possibility. She decorated it with care, slowly filling it with soft-colored curtains, warm lights, and handmade touches. A few plants by the window, a cozy chair near the corner, and a little wooden table where she would sit with her tea. Everything inside that home had love in it, because she chose it with her heart. Not out of duty, not for anyone else but for herself. She still had her job, but now she worked with a different energy. She no longer felt drained. She didn't come home to cold stares or endless complaints. Instead, she came home to calm, to music she liked, and the smell of food she cooked just for herself. She started eating better, sleeping deeper, and laughing more real belly laughs, the kind she had forgotten she even had in her. What made it even more special was the new circle she built around her. A few good friends, kind women and thoughtful neighbors, people who checked on her, invited her out, and celebrated even her smallest wins. They didn't ask her for anything. They just cared. And that was enough. Zola began to smile differently. She wore bright dresses again, and this time not to look strong, but because she felt strong. She stood on her balcony most evenings, watching the sunset over Nkamba, the colors blending like a painting, and whispered softly to herself, "I'm okay." She didn't need their approval anymore. She didn't need to earn love. Her apartment might have been small, but the peace inside it was bigger than anything she had ever known. She had walked away with nothing, but in this little corner of Nkamba, she found everything she had been missing: peace, freedom, and the quiet joy of simply being herself. The sun was setting over Nkamba, painting the sky in soft orange and gold. Zola stepped out onto her small balcony, barefoot and calm. She wore a flowing mustard yellow gown that danced gently in the breeze. Her natural hair was wrapped high in a beautiful head wrap that matched the strength in her eyes. The glow on her skin wasn't just from the sunset, it came from the peace inside her. She leaned on the railing and took a deep breath, feeling light, whole, and finally free. She wasn't smiling because life had been easy. She wasn't smiling because her family had apologized. They hadn't. In fact, they never called. They never said sorry. But she didn't need that anymore. She had stopped waiting for love from people who didn't know how to give it. She had stopped shrinking herself to keep others comfortable. Zola had changed. She had grown. She had healed in silence, in small quiet steps that no one saw. Her pain didn't define her anymore. Her worth no longer depended on what she gave others. It was hers now, fully hers. That evening, as the wind gently touched her face and the city lights started to twinkle, Zola closed her eyes and whispered a thank you, not to anyone but to herself, for walking away, for surviving, for choosing peace. In that moment, she wasn't just standing on a balcony. She was standing in her power. She didn't win them back. She won herself. And that was more than enough.